Alright, so in this tutorial, we're going to learn how to create a HelloWorld REST API with Lambda proxy integration and the API gateway on AWS. So Lambda and the API gateway are two of the AWS services I use the most to create APIs and host my scripts on the cloud. Now, if I'm new to AWS Lambda and the API gateway, Lambda is a serverless computing service that lets you to run code on the cloud without the need to manage servers. You only pay for what you use. And within a Lambda function, you have proxy integration versus non-proxy integration. The difference between the two is that proxy integration will manage the request and response structure like the headers and body for you. So this less work involved. First, non-proxy integration, you have to manage everything on your own. And in this tutorial, we'll focus on proxy integration. API Gateway, on the other hand, is a managed service for creating and publishing APIs. And to create the HelloWorld REST API, we'll be hosting the source code on a Lambda function and use API Gateway to interact with the incoming requests. You can think of Lambda is the backend and the API Gateway is the front end. This is a beginner-friendly tutorial. So if I'm new to AWS Lambda and the API Gateway, then this is a great tutorial to help you to get started. And as long as you have an active AWS account and some knowledge in programming, then you should be able to follow along just fine. Now, before diving into the tutorial, I want to quickly cover the pricing. Now, let's take a look at the pricing for using Lambda. So every month, you get 1 million free requests and 400,000 gigabyte seconds of computing time for free. And to be honest, that's actually really generous. So in terms of the usage, and if you calculate, let's do a calculation. So if we take 400,000 divided by 60, and that's approximately 6,666 minutes of free computing for free. Now, just in case, if you exceed the free tier usage, then based on the usage, it can range from 0.00001666667 cents per second to 0.000013334 cents per second if your program makes 15 billion seconds of usage per month. And for most of the individuals, I don't think that's even possible. And for API Gateway, there's also a free usage, but it's only up to the first 12 months. So if I'm a new user, you get 1 million requests code for free and 750,000 connection minutes per month for free. Now, just in case, if you are not a new user, then for the first 200 million requests, it's going to cost you $1, still pretty cheap. And that's for the HTTP APIs. And for REST API, it's going to be a little bit more expensive. It's going to be $3.50 for the first 233 million requests. In this tutorial, I'll focus on using the REST APIs framework. All right, so before we dive into the tutorial, let me just give you a quick demo of the API that we'll be creating in this exercise. So here's the Python function we'll be using to create the API. So it's a very straightforward function. From this function, we have two parameters. And these two parameters are optional parameters. So even though if we don't provide the arguments, the function will still execute. Now, in terms of the output, we're going to return a message based on the greeting and the name. Now, here in my Python file, I already create an API, which is going to be this endpoint that can provide my parameters, greeting and name. Now, if we look at the function here, let me just quickly explain the function. Because we're using Lambda proxy integration to create the function, to host the function. So that means that Lambda will automatically manage the structure for us. Let me create two windows. And from the API, I want to be able to provide both the parameter and the header. So for the parameter, my key is going to be greeting. And for the headers, my key is going to be name. And the reason why I'm creating the function, the API function this way is so I can show you how to use both header and body to capture the incoming requests. Now from the request code, I'm going to make a GET request. I'm going to provide the endpoint, which is going to be the API URL. Then I'm going to supply the headers and the parameters. Now if I go ahead and run the function, and it's going to send a message by JJ. And that's going to be corresponding to this body statement here. Now, just in case, if I don't provide both the headers and the parameters, and that's going to send the default hello there. All right, so that's going to be ABC. I'm going to show you for the demo. Now let's dive into the tutorial. All right, so first you want to log into your AWS account. And on the AWS console, you want to navigate to Lambda. Now, both Lambda and API Gateway are region specific. So make sure that you choose the correct region when you create a Lambda function in the API Gateway. All right, so here let's go ahead and expand the menu. Then we're going to click Functions. Then click on Create Function. Here we have three options. We can create everything from scratch, or we can use a container such as a Docker image, or we can use one of the templates from AWS. But here I'm going to choose Other from scratch. I'm going to create a function from scratch. Now for the function name, I'm going to name the function HelloWorld. For the runtime, choose Python or your preferred programming language. And for the architecture, choose x86-64. Under permissions, expand this change default execution rule. And here I'm going to choose create a new rule from AWS policy template. Now for the role name, I'm going to name the role demo hello world lambda role. And I'll leave the policy templates empty. Now go ahead and click on create function. Oh, let's already create a function before. All right, so I'm going to name the function hello world 2. And same thing for the role name. And once we create the function, let me close this. We need to update the Python function. Let's go to the top and click on template. All right, so if we look at timeout, so by default, the function will only run for 3 seconds. I would highly recommend you increase the timeout duration. And to change the timeout duration, so we can go down to configuration. And under general configuration, click on edit. And let's go ahead and increase the timeout duration to 30 seconds. Now here you can also increase the memory and the ephemeral storage. So this is the temporary storage size. If you're running a computing intensive application or function, you can also increase the memory up to 10,240 megabytes. Now let's go ahead and save the settings and go back to code. Then we need to click on deploy to make the function go live. Now, once we create the HelloWorld Lambda function, the next step is to create the API Gateway endpoint. Now here, go ahead and duplicate the tab and navigate to API Gateway. I'm going to also create a new page. And I'm going to navigate to CloudWatch. So CloudWatch is used to monitor different services and usage. So we're going to use CloudWatch to monitoring the Lambda function usage. So just in case, if there's any error or exception, then it's going to show up in CloudWatch. All right, so under CloudWatch, we're going to click on Log Groups. All right, so under API Gateway, we have 4 different types, API types. we have HTTP, WebSocket, REST API, and REST API private. We're going to choose REST API, then click on Build. And here we have 4 options. We can create a new API from scratch, or we can clone an existing API, or import API, or use one of the example API. Now here I'm going to choose new API. Then I'm going to give the API a name. And I'll name the API HelloWorld API. Now for the endpoint type, I'm going to choose regional. Now go ahead and click on Create API. Now after we create the API, we need to create a resource. So by default, you can use the default resource, and which is going to be the URL by itself. But if you want to keep the API routes a little bit more organized, then we can create a resource. And you will see how resource works in a second. Now for the resource name, I'm going to name the resource Hello World. Then I'm going to create the resource. Now assuming that you have different functions that you want to execute using the same API. In that case, you can simply create another resource. And for this exercise, I'm going to create my Hello World endpoint. Then I'm going to create a method assigned to this resource. All right, so go ahead and click on Create Method. I'm going to choose any to make my API a little bit more flexible. And for the integration type, I'm going to choose Lambda function. Now, this is a pretty important step. We need to make sure that we enable Lambda proxy integration. So here, if we look at the description, send the request to a Lambda function as a structured event. Now here we need to select the Lambda function that we want to use. And here we enable Lambda proxy integration first. And I'm going to set the timeout to default and save. And that seems to solve the issue. All right, so go ahead and deploy the API and create a new stage. And I'll name the stage to demo. Deploy. Now right here's the invoking URL. So this is going to be the base URL followed by the staging. So in case if you have multiple environment, then you can create different stages. And you can use this identifier to identify the environment. So it can be, like I said before, it can be a testing environment, production environment, UAT environment, and so on. Now, if I expand the resource tree all the way to my API, Hello World, and these are the methods that are available. Now click on Get Method, and here's the invoke URL that are tied to the Get method. So essentially, most of the methods are going to have the same invoke URL. The only thing that's different is how we execute the method. I'm going to take the URL, and here I'm going to simply update the endpoint. And I'll keep the parameters and headers the same. So let me go ahead and run the function. And here I get the message, hello there. Now I'll just do one more testing. This time I'm going to specify the headers, which is going to be the greeting, and the parameters, which is going to be the name. And I'll go ahead and run the script again. And this time I have by JJ. So this concludes this tutorial, and I hope you guys find this video useful. Feel free to post your question or your feedback in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys in the next video.